Hey everybody, it's the Heretic. So, I would like to discuss the premise of violent video games as being influential of our society and causing problems with mass shootings and gun violence and so on and so forth, just violence in general. Because it's a premise that seems to be readily dismissed. What I find most amusing about that is that it is readily dismissed while comparisons to other countries' gun laws are wholeheartedly welcomed. In other words, they'll say, well, if we look at what they did, then we look at our gun laws, and right there we see the solution. Yeah. Well, funny thing, what you may be shocked to realize is that a very significant portion, if not all, of these countries, they censor violent video games as well. Oh, yeah. So apparently they see an issue with it as well. For example, Germany. Germany has extremely restrictive video game regulations. It's actually called, if I'm not mistaken, the Youth Protection Act. It's been relaxed a little bit as of late, but not much, and it's possibly gotten tighter in some places and a little looser in others. But in like the 80s, video games weren't even allowed to have blood in them. They had to have like green blood or something of the sort, but red, actual blood-looking blood was not allowed. And an example of this that can be applied and sort of observed globally would be a particular level from Call of Duty called No Russian. If you don't know what that is, I suggest you look it up and familiarize yourself with it. Now, why is this interesting? Well, because its entire premise is that you are a member, you're a spy who's infiltrated a group of Russians, and this group is conducting a false flag in the form of a mass shooting. There was actually a lot of controversy over this and how the guy that put it together and everything went into it, and the ways he considered. I think at one point they considered having you be on the receiving end of the shooting. There were a lot of thoughts and considerations that went into the scene, and as it stands, that's what they ended up with. But this gets interesting. Now, let me just start off by saying you can actually not fire a shot. You don't have to shoot anybody, and you can go through this entire level. The level will progress just the same if you don't shoot anybody. And that's interesting. And in America, they also give you the option to skip the whole level. I think you can do that anywhere. But I know for sure in America, you get the option to even just skip the whole level. But not many people do. Most people don't. But let's look at how this plays out in other nations, this particular level. First of all, I think Australia, I know Australia for sure, and the United Kingdom tried to have the level itself or the entire game banned on behalf of the level. You know, the gun laws of Australia and so on and so forth. They didn't even want it played there. Japan and Germany allow the game to be played, but if you shoot a single civilian, it may be shoot them or it may be kill them, but in one way or another, let's go with kill. If you kill a single civilian, game over. You lose. They don't reward that behavior. It's not like the uncensored version that Americans get to play, where you can literally just mow down as many people as you want. In fact, you're encouraged to mow down as many innocent men and women as you can. I think in Germany and, of course in Germany and Japan, they still allow you to shoot the police officers trying to stop you, and they still allow you to shoot the military that comes in to try and intervene. And these cops are Johnny on the spot. They're not really the Uvalde type. But the point is, I mean, that's the premise of the game anyway, is you're playing good guys and bad guys and people that are kind of in between. So of course you shoot people that have weapons and are fighting back. so they don't really see the need to edit that out. But if you shoot in Japan or Germany, if you shoot and kill a civilian, game over, you lose. And the Japanese variant also changes the words "remember no Russian" to "kill them, they're just Russians," or something like that. I think the Japanese and the Russians don't really get along, generally speaking. Now, there's some really interesting facets to this, in the sense that there were actually at least one mass shooting for sure, maybe two, in which the shooter blamed his actions as being influenced by that game, specifically that level. And that's, to me, fascinating, especially with how much effort people put into claiming video games don't inspire violence. Even though, if I'm not mistaken, if you look at psych wards or prisons or places where people's mental state is being regulated, if they're allowed to play video games, they're not allowed to play video games like that. Unless I'm grievously mistaken, I don't believe I am, but they don't let them play stuff like that, and they don't let them watch movies and stuff like that. Food for thought. But what's most interesting about this level is if you watch people play it, go on YouTube and look it up and watch people play it, and you will see something very interesting, and that is that the people who do it, they begin to exhibit some very unnerving behavior. They start stalking people. Watch them play it. These are just video captures, of people playing the game live. They start exhibiting stalking behavior. They start to torment some of these people. They catch them in a corner and they'll shoot near them, or they'll zoom in and shoot them in the crotch, or they'll shoot them in the knee and drop them, because when you hurt people, they crawl and they continue to try to get away, and so they'll shoot them in the leg, and then they'll shoot them in the leg again, and then they'll shoot them in the leg again, or they'll shoot them in the leg and then very calmly and slowly and methodically pull out their knife, walk up on them, and then stab them to death. You'll see some behavior exhibited that could be problematic. Even more interesting in this, to me anyway, is that, let's see, how do I put this? Is that there's this crazy notion that this doesn't influence people's behavior. Well, most people know. I mean, good God, millions of people have played this game and they didn't go out and do this stuff. Most people know. But there are some people that when you factor that variable in with a few other variables, their mental state in the first place, their family life, things like that, this game becomes a coping mechanism for those people. Something where they sort of enact their fantasies and impart their rage in a non-physical world. The problem with that is it becomes something akin to what sexual predators do, rapists and people who assault children a lot of times. They begin by taking in pornography, videos, images, and stuff like that. And then over time, that doesn't satisfy them, and they end up needing the real thing. And then it goes from there. Particularly if other variables enter into the situation. They lose a family member who was sort of their moral compass. Their mental state deteriorates, so on and so forth. Seems like there were some other things I wanted to say about this. I may add a supplemental video to it. But the bottom line is the notion that video games and just the glorification of violence in general. Understand something, it's not just video games when we say that. It's video games that graphically glorify violence and give you a very realistic autonomous control over what is happening and how that violence is undertaken. That can... it can have an effect on you. Most of the time, it's been discovered that these games inspire a spike in aggression individually, but how that aggressive spike works collectively and all that other stuff, I just, there's not a lot that I'm aware of literature on. But clearly, some of these other nations feel it's a problem. Anyway, maybe that's heresy.